in Nairobi or in London, or basically any place where a lot of people live, there's likely a NetSquared group there as well. So as you travel the world, stop on by and hang out with your Tech for Good friends. And I told you about the amazing volunteers who make this happen. When we go over the first social this evening, the first beer is on us and our sponsors. The second one is the one you should be buying for the great volunteers. And speaking of great sponsors who make this thing happen, first of all, there's TechSoup Canada. So if you're a nonprofit church, charity, or library and you are paying full price for your software, you're probably throwing your money away. So definitely go there, create your free account, and see what's available. Everything from Google for Nonprofits, 100% free, down to everything in the Microsoft suite, which is going to be around 80% off, as well as great discounts on like Adobe software, things from Intuit. Basically, if you have a software problem, TechSoup probably can save you money around that. We're also, of course, sponsored by The Hive, which is this place. So it's a social impact co-working space, which basically means it's for people who care about the same stuff you do. They've got all the things you'd expect, photocopiers, a reception desk, meeting spaces, as well as lots of educational opportunities. And the first day to check it out, of course, is free because they're like the mythical drug dealer. They're trying to get you hooked. But definitely, this is someplace you should really check out. Say you work from home and you're really bored, this is a great place. Say you work from an office and everyone you work with is a jerk, again, this is your escape hatch. We're also, of course, sponsored by iATS Payments and the Vancouver Community Network. iATS Payments is basically the way for you to accept money online. They deal only with nonprofits. They're based here in Vancouver. So if you have any issues, they're there to help you solve them. And Vancouver Community Network has got a SMS distribution service. So if you are working here in the downtown east side and want to get a message out to people who live here in this community, they have a way to help you reach out to people. So it's really helpful for people with social workers, working in shelters, and services like that. And we have a fancy new sponsor, so I'm going to give you a little bit more time today. So our friends at Event Chain have come on this month. And what you need to know about them is they can combine all the sexiness of blockchain with the solving your problem part of event management. So here's the blurb, which I think is going to be very handy because I'm not the brightest person in the world. So here's what you need to know. EventChain is the world's first event ticketing platform built on blockchain, and it's based here in Vancouver. It's got lower fees than other providers, and of course, because you guys are great nonprofits, they're going to waive all fees for your first event. They've also got a really interesting affiliate model, where you can actually basically have your supporters create events, where automatically a percentage of the ticketing fees will actually go back to you as a charity, so they can just make that process happen for you really cleanly. And of course, if you are worried about scalping, their blockchaininess is going to help you solve all of those problems as well, which is the real magic to them, of course. So we've actually got our friend Dino from Blockchain here, who should stand up and wave, because he's here to answer all your questions. And ideally, we're going to keep him at the very end, put a beer in him, and then we can ask him all the hard questions.
Oh, I'll give everything at that.
All right, love it, thank you. And of course, we're also sponsored by N10, who has helped cover the healthy food snacks here today, and One Day Website, who makes sure the website works, because that is something I'm clearly incapable of based on my past experiences. Lastly, you have some homework to do. At the very end of this event, we're going to give each one of you up to, say, actually, there's too many people, 30 seconds. 30 seconds for you to basically do a community announcement. So if you're looking to hire someone, if you are looking for a new opportunity, maybe you are just announced like a really cool new project and you just want to show off just a little bit, you have 30 seconds to tell people about the new projects that you're involved with. And that is pretty much all I need to tell you about, except for to whet your appetite with the schedule that's going to be happening for the next 3 months. I'm really excited Darren Barefoot's actually going to come in April and bring 3 teams to the front of the stage and we're all going to get terrified by finding out what teens actually do on social media. It's basically the event of all nightmares as an old. So that's going to be what we're up to. Now I'm going to pass it over to our experts, and then basically tell you, like, at the end of this, remember, we're going to go for drinks. It's all going to happen over at Darby's. It's a block and a half down that way. But don't worry, Pied Piper style, we will have someone to guide you along the way. First round is on us. In fact, because we have more sponsorship than I planned, maybe the second round's on us. Let's see. It's going to be a good chat. So that is all of my intro blurbs. Now, let's start this off. Because he's very fancy and triple booked, I actually have Rob Cottingham who's going to start this off. He's going to talk a little bit about trust as a killer app in the age of fake. So I'm going to cue up his slides, and he is going to...
I don't have slides.
Well, then it's even easier. This is what I'm like, I don't remember those slides. All right, ladies and gentlemen, give up for Rob.
Thank you very much. It is so heartening to see so many people here on a night when all of us could be at home watching Donald Trump on TV talking about the Southern Wall. And instead, we've all opted to come here and share our experience and expertise around the greater good and building community. And honestly, if that's the only trend that comes out of tonight for 2019, I'm completely on board. Sign me up. The idea of choosing one trend to encapsulate an entire year feels a little bit daunting, especially given that we're talking about a very rapidly changing, complex, multifaceted arena. I came very close to deciding to talk about blockchain-enabled, AI-driven, virtual reality powered, personalized self-driving skateboards, but I was worried that everybody else would be talking about the same subject. The other problem with those, of course, is that they aren't real. And things that aren't real is what I would actually like to talk about tonight. The last few years have been a crash course in fake and just how much of our online experience is being faked for our benefit or, more often, unfortunately, for our detriment. We have encountered, of course, the world of fake news, generated by everybody from state actors to apparently teenagers in Macedonia trying to drive clicks. We have had fake memes generated by state intelligence agencies, fake comments on consultations about network neutrality, fake people who are trying to friend you and engage with you online and help enlist you in their campaigns of fake news. In short, we have been learning just how inauthentic the online experience can be. And sometimes all that means is you're left with a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. Sometimes it means that you're defrauded. Sometimes it means that elections are manipulated or that public affairs end up being sabotaged and undermined. But the net result of it is that at the very time when we have been driving civil conversation and civil society into the online space, our ability to trust what goes on there is declining. And that should be worrisome to nonprofits. It should be worrisome to pretty much anybody who has a stake in what goes on in the online world and in civil society that we're building. And the problem isn't just limited to what we're seeing now. We have looming technologies like deep fakes, the ability to create media that looks exactly like the real thing. Images, audio, video that look like prominent public individuals doing or saying things they would find abhorrent. All of it created with nefarious means in mind for entertainment and points between. How realistic is it? That isn't really my point is, we have a very serious challenge ahead of us. And in an era of inauthenticity, at the the very time that we are trying to organize online, find support online, collaborate online, build society online, trust is eroding. And our ability to have trusted relationships and trusted interactions, that's eroding as well. Now, that's a problem for everything from e-commerce to conducting elections to just being sure that your privacy is being maintained. But it has special resonance for nonprofits because trust is the lifeblood for nonprofit organizations. It is what allows collaboration to happen online. It's what allows supporters to feel a sense of loyalty and connection to organizations. It's what allows the community and the sense of community that you develop online to flourish and foster and grow. Without that trust, that diminishes dramatically. And unfortunately, we have, over the past several years, developed a whole bunch of technologies that undermine that trust, but serve good, helpful, productive functions. Everything from scheduling tweets, to templated emails, to micro-targeting. Things that mimic human relationships and mimic human connection, but that every once in a while either land in that uncanny valley sense that something's not quite right, or just outright fail. And the technology does always at some point fail. And you realize that what you may have thought was human connection was actually something that was being manipulated. For a good cause, yes, but it was still being manipulated. That is why people are so unhappy when they get a message from you that says, dear first name, last name. It's why they get upset if they can't get a beloved dead relative off your mailing list. It's why they get upset when an organization that they thought they had a genuine connection to turns out to not be reciprocated. So in 2019 and the years beyond, I think the task ahead of us is also a call to action. The task, if we want to defend what we're building online, and if we want to defend the relationships we're building there, is to reinforce the authentic side of the business. And sometimes that is going to mean letting go a little bit of some of the really handy, useful, God help us, cost-saving technologies that we've been using. But it's not just a question of letting go of things, it's also a question of embracing things, to the point where we can start fostering genuine conversations online. Conversations that, yes, may cost a little more in time and attention and resources, but that actually start to build deeper relationships. Then the contrast with the inauthentic will grow. And for nonprofits, that's especially important because we don't just care about the organizations that we're building, although that is near and dear, I'm sure, to your hearts. But we also care about the kind of society we're building. So as we are building more authentic conversations and more authentic connections with supporters, let's also start building them among supporters and across divides, across organizations, across divides of opinion, across divides of perspective and demographics. We can use the trust that we've earned with supporters and with the public to help push back against the forces of fake. Because make no doubt, they aren't going away. They are only going to be ramping up their work. And whether you believe that the real villain of the piece are state actors or manipulations from the public relations side, some nebulous idea of hackers, or whatever, there are people who are very vested in the success of fake and in undermining trust. Our responsibility is to push back against that. We have an opportunity here to answer the question, are you a robot? And to answer that not just for organizations, not just for our relationships with supporters, but to help people start answering that to each other as well. And that, to me, is the most important work we did in 2019. Thank you very much.
Wait, thank you. Excellent. So now I'm bringing in another champion of this community, which is Brady Josephson, who is going to be talking about some of the emerging trends around third-party giving. It's happening all over the place, not just on your website. He's going to tell you all about it. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up, Brady Josephson! Woo!
Thank you. I originally wanted to talk about online fundraising and A/B testing and optimization, the work that I actually do. Eli said it was boring, so I'm going to talk about third-party giving. So this is a very interesting topic. I work for a company called Chimp that I'll talk about, which actually facilitates third-party giving. So I've been in this space for a while, and the reason why I think it's interesting for 2019 is something like this. Here, I'll step to the side. Have you guys seen this already in Canada, Facebook fundraisers? Yeah, so they came in November, and so they're just kind of starting to hit the Canadian market. They've been in the US for well over a year, and in the US they raised over $300 million in its first year. Now, just for some context there, Network for Good, which is probably the leading third-party processor provider, I'll talk about third-party, how I define that. They raised $300 million total in the previous year. So Facebook in 1 year basically raised as much as this third-party network, which has been operating for a decade. So it shows the power of them just flipping the switch and saying we're actually really going to dip our toes into this water. So third-party giving is, this is how I'm going to define it. So normally we make a charitable donation, right? Me as donor give to charity A, I get tax receipt, right? That's how we normally give. So third-party giving is simply this. You want to give to charity A, but you actually give to another registered charity. They issue the tax receipt. They take in your funds, and then they pass it on to the charity that you intended. So I'm not talking about payment processors like iATS. I'm not talking about fundraising tools like Fundraiser. I'm talking about actual facilitated giving through a third party. Now, the charitable vehicle or mechanism behind this is called the donor advised fund. Does anyone know anything about donor advised funds? A little bit, kind of? Okay. So donor advised funds aren't new. They've been around for a long time. Typically, community foundations would use them as a tax vehicle to encourage generally wealthier donors as a way to give. So they can give now, get a tax receipt, and then hold their giving and their assets in the charitable foundation, and then determine when they want to distribute it to a qualified donee whenever they want. So it's a very efficient tax vehicle for people to give. Now, there's a whole conversation around donor advised funds. Are they really growing giving? 6 of the 10 largest nonprofits in the US are now charitable organizations that do donor advised funds. They have the same disbursement quotas as public foundations. They're not very transparent. So it's a whole conversation on donor advised funds that I'm happy to talk about later. But what's interesting is companies like this, which are using this model, and whose Facebook is using in Canada. They're using PayPal Giving Fund. It's a brand new charity that they are using to actually process these donations. These companies are basically taking a donor advised fund model and bringing it online, saying you can give online through these entities, through their charities, and then they'll pass it on to any charity of your choice. That's what third-party giving is, and that's what I think is interesting. So those three, if you look at how they've been growing cumulatively over the last 4 years, they've grown about 80% overall. Some of them, like Benevity and Chimp, are growing at 100% each year. Except for Chimp in this last year. I just want to highlight, that's actually when I left Chimp. So I'm obliged to tell you correlation is not causation, but it is data. So I'll just leave that there. So it's something that is growing, and we'll see, I think, an explosion in, we get a year or two lag because of how we file T3010s and 990s, but we should see an explosion in 17 and 18. And so here's Network for Good and Canada charted out. You can see this kind of growth trend. So the question is this actually good? Is this bad? Like, what does this actually mean? So here's a few things that I think we should consider. And the first is, this is my framework of looking at any new initiative, whether it's fundraising, whether it's giving, whether it's technology. Is this good for the donors? Is this good for charities? And is this good for philanthropy overall? So sometimes we as charities, we focus exclusively in this box, what's good for us, and we don't give a lick about donors or philanthropy at times. Then sometimes there's vendors or providers who all they care about is maybe the donor, and they don't think about the charity. That happens a lot in third-party giving. So we need to think about these 3 different stools and what's good. So a few things to consider. Transaction fees, conversion tracking, donor data, giving experience, and market confusion. So first, transaction fees. The trend now is basically going down to 0 fees. Facebook's waiving their fees, PayPal Giving Fund waives their fees. Basically, these entities that are viewing this more as charitable and their CSR programs, aren't collecting fees. So increasingly, fees are a non-issue. Daryl Hatton can talk a lot more about the race down to zero and what that means for payment providers. So conversion tracking as an optimizer and a fundraiser, this is brutal because you get basically zero data on where people are coming from, why they're giving, how much they're giving. You can't run any tests, you can't control the user experience. All of that is in the hands of the third-party provider. So you are isolated from this data. To me, that's a big negative, that we can't control or have access to that data. The biggest thing is probably donor data. Because at law it's a gift to another entity, you as the donor have to say, please share my information with the end charity. Now, oftentimes it's defaulted as don't share, sometimes it's defaulted to share, but it's about 50%, sometimes lower, sometimes higher. So at best, half of the data you actually get when people give through these things. Now, most of our fundraising programs are built on data. Who's the donor? What did they give? When's the last time? Right? Recency, frequency, monetary amount. However we're using that, we use data, and now we don't get any of it. And if you think about lifetime value, how do we build a relationship and grow giving if we have no idea who they are? Increasingly, it's going to be a big, big challenge for us fundraisers, marketers, nonprofits, where we have to figure out how to connect these people without their information, which is something that we haven't had to do very much. Giving experience, I think this is both good. If you've given through Facebook Fundraiser, super easy. Google search in the US, super easy. Because they have lots of money, lots of developers, the giving experience is very good. What's bad is the tax receipt comes out from someone else. You maybe don't hear from the charity. So the overall, the long tail experience, I think, is a negative. And then market confusion. I want to support this charity, and now I have a tax receipt from over here. I get an email from over here. End of year, I want to get a printout of my receipt. Who do I call? How do I get updates? It's causing market confusion. And then on the back end at charities, how do I get the donor data? How do I figure out where the receipts go? How do I get this into my CRM? What am I legally able to do and to communicate? So it's causing a lot of market confusion. So some of the things to consider there. But what can charities do about it? This has actually put some pressure. So a few things here. One, I think brand, the power of brand is going to rise increasingly in prominence. So when someone gets prompted by Facebook, would you like to create a fundraiser for a cause? And you go, oh, sure. Who are you going to create it for? It's the charity that you think of that's top of mind. Maybe they're in your inbox, maybe you saw them on TV. But generally speaking, who you have a connection with or do you have the most brand affinity for is who benefits most from these third-party providers. So things like TV spots or things that we in the direct marketing world kind of maybe billboards, things like this that build brand, we're going to have to get more sophisticated in what is the true value of brand. We can't just measure it how we used to measure it. So that's one thing. And building an actual community. Word of mouth is massive. If someone does a Facebook fundraiser or says this is who we're giving to or fundraising for, the network effect just gets compounded. So that's increasingly important. Improving the digital experience. So as we purchase more and more on e-commerce sites, that puts more pressure on charity websites to not be crappy. Because we're used to a better standard. Now if we're making more and more charitable donations in 2 clicks on Facebook, on Google search, through third-party providers, it puts even more pressure on our charitable websites to have a good, positive giving experience. Otherwise they go, why would I give to the charity when I can just give over here? Why would I have this relationship with the charity when I can interact with this beautiful interface over here? So it's another threat or challenge on the digital experience. I know impact and storytelling are still kind of like buzzwords, but where is someone going to go when they want to find out what their donation did? Maybe you don't have a chance to email them, or if they're looking to make a donation through a third party that doesn't have all that information, they're going to go to your website. So not your annual report, not your crap about your annual reports. What's the actual impact that you're having on a real level, on a real basis, so people can find social media, website, encouraging and sharing more of the actual impact that you're having is going to be even more important, not burying it 6 pages deep. And then embrace it and adapt to it. I think there's a temptation for us when these things arise that are really difficult, right? It's a new way to get money. It's a new way to process donations. We kind of want to walk away from it and reject it. If you look at how things are getting purchased, think of just Amazon. I did this at Christmas. I feel bad. I went into a store, tried something on, found it on Amazon, and bought it as I walked out the store, right? This is how people purchase. Amazon didn't make that, right? Amazon is a brokerage. So we can fight against how people naturally buy things nowadays and how increasingly they're naturally giving, or we can find a way to embrace it and figure out how do we actually collect the most possible? How do we communicate to these donors? How do we actually acquire email addresses from these donors, right? Maybe we can actually, if we don't have all of the information, can we do a Facebook advertising campaign to fill out the rest of their file so we actually get more of their information? how is it that we can actually embrace this third-party giving as it rises and adapt to it, as opposed to kind of fight against it and reject it? Just a short story, I was in a meeting where St. Jude's was like the second strongest nonprofit brand in the world, basically. They raised, I think it was about $50 million from Facebook fundraisers, intentionally not telling people about it, because they don't get any of the donor data, and they have thousands and thousands and millions of dollars invested in their own peer-to-peer platform. Yet, the market is saying, we just want to do this, right? 2 clicks of a button, Facebook fundraiser, all your friends are there. Ask, it's so easy. So you can keep fighting the trend, or you can figure out ways to kind of embrace it and make it work for you. And I think that's going to be key. Adaptability isn't always a nonprofit strength, but I think it's something we're going to have to get better at. So those are some of the things that charities can do about it. And that's it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Awesome, thank you. So the next person who comes to talk with us today is Thom from iATS Payments. He's going to be talking a little bit about video, chat, and tools to advance your engagement cycle. While he's here, I should also actually basically just use this chance to embarrass him. Super grateful to iATS Payments. You have been the longest standing, most loyal sponsor of this event. The post-event socials where we all go for booze happen because iATS Payments has been there really reliably helping us build this community over the years. So super grateful for that.
If nothing else,
Okay, we're gonna hold it like this, and it's gonna be great. And all looking forward to it.
well, thanks, Eli. It's certainly been a really cool opportunity for me to be part of this, and I've been in marketing for about 10 years now, but I'm relatively new to the nonprofit space. I was in banking, went to fintech, and just kind of got bored of squeezing out basis points of profitability for banks, and I think this opportunity came up, and it was just that one that spark that was like, hey, this is something that I can take what I've learned and actually try and do some good. So I'm excited to be here, and certainly supporting this and other events like it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about donor engagement and online chat, chatbots. Get to follow up by talking about robots now, which is always great. But it's a couple of trends that I've seen kind of in my past life in the for-profit world, and I think there's going to be some great synergies, obviously, coming to the nonprofit world. A little bit about iATS Payments. We're based here in Vancouver. Some of you may be clients of ours. We are an online payments company, exclusively focused on the nonprofit space. So one of the things that's really important for us is solving problems. We have more than payment processing. We're trying to solve problems around online fundraising and helping you be more effective online fundraisers. And obviously, a big part of that is tech adoption, using tech effectively, and that's obviously a clear segue here. So, first trend is online chatbots. Seeing a lot of this, like I said, in the for-profit world, but it seems like it started its sort of influence in the nonprofit space about a year and a half ago. Beth Cantor talks a little bit about it, about the ethics of this piece, certainly, and that's obviously around the authenticity we just talked about. I think that's a big piece of this here, but certainly an opportunity here to engage our donors, tell stories, all that stuff. And I think there's basically 3 main use cases when it comes to online chat, when it comes to chatbots. Things like automating general inquiries, things like what time are you open? Little things like that. We can sort of have a chat bot talk about those things, and we can set those up in a way that a person can engage with that chat bot in a way that makes it feel relatively natural and authentic. Obviously, fundraising, actually the ask, we're asking for money. I've seen a little bit of this now, a couple of examples, and certainly the experience there is positive. So I think injecting some of this into our own strategies and tactics is something that I see as a
as a use case. But the really interesting one, you talked about storytelling, is a storytelling piece. Charity Water is a good example. They've got a chatbot that's kind of taking someone that comes to the website on a journey, speaking about a particular topic, showing some video, and sort of telling a narrative that in a way that might not be possible, or be a little more engaging perhaps than you might see in other mechanisms. So it's certainly interesting. It certainly caught my eye. It's certainly something that I'm going to be watching and sort of implementing more. And I think it's again one of those things that we'll see more of. Second one is video, and I think these two things go hand in hand. So whether it's sort of online video, standardized video, personalized video, where we're making one video for one person or a few people, that's something starting to make a big push here. The idea or the concept of using video across that donor journey, whether we're the awareness phase, when we're asking for money, or we're evangelizing retention, the storytelling piece. Obviously, at each stage, I think there's an opportunity for video to play a big piece. And we think about how video and online chatbots and how those two things can work together. I think there's some pretty unique and compelling opportunities there. Whether it's a particular campaign, whether it's supercharging what you're already doing with email and website and social, and just giving an opportunity there to just provide another way of engaging our donors. This idea of sort of coming across as a higher level of sophistication and adding another tool in your toolbox is something there. And the most important thing for both of these trends is they're relatively inexpensive. They're easy to implement. They don't take massive tech resources to run. They're, pretty much anyone can do them. And you can start small and kind of build out from there. I think that's a really unique and compelling opportunity there. Just last bit there, we want to end off on a quick announcement on a new initiative that we're launching. It's called the Greenhouse. It's part of our iATS Gives Back kind of campaign or suite of programs. And basically it's as part of our office renovation that we did recently, we have some extra space in our office. We have a larger sort of boardroom size room. We've got a smaller meeting room. We also have a private office, and we're opening that up for nonprofits to be able to use. So we'll have an online booking system. We'll be able to accommodate sort of daily bookings of space. I know space is obviously at a premium for a lot of us. So when we're talking about brainstorming sessions or board meetings or any sort of event that requires some extra space, training sessions, things like that, I think that's a pretty great opportunity. Again, it's just an opportunity for us to give back a little bit and go from there. Otherwise, there's some contact information. Looking forward to seeing how these two trends play out, and any questions, happy to talk after. Thanks again.
Lovely, thank you. All right, now we're going to bring in Shoni Field, who's going to be talking about, magical fundraising things. And of course, puppies. You can all feel very jealous because you don't have access to puppies, but it's going to be good. And I am going to find slides.
So I will, because I'm from the BCS PCA, have gratuitous use of puppies and cats throughout my flight deck because I can. So want to talk about one big picture thing and then a couple of sort of two smaller tactic things. One is, I think, digital in the nonprofit sector. It's time we stop acting like a little puppy and start acting like a grown-up. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way. I mean, we've sort of been doing our cool, flashy, independent, trying things out, innovating thing, and it hasn't necessarily been viewed with the same seriousness that other fundraising has been in terms of investment of resources, in terms of strategic approach to it, and in terms of seeing how it fits in with the rest of fundraising. So we're at the point now where I'm going to go into a bit of that, where digitals can't be sort of ignored by the rest of fundraising. And I think we're at a tipping point where it's now becoming the essential foundation for all other fundraising. And so when we look at everything from internet users, active social media, mobile users, and mobile social users, you can see huge penetration. And what we're starting to see is if this represents people's preferred platform, preferred way of communicating, that if we're not treating this very seriously as the foundation for all other fundraising going forward, we have a real disconnect because we're not giving people what they want. So my big picture thing is it's sort of time to, we've spent a lot of time talking tactics in digital, and I think we need to stop talking tactics, well, keep talking tactics, but layer that on as a big strategic discussion of where we're going with digital. And so having said that, I'm going to go into a couple of tactical things that I'm also seeing coming up. So lead generation is, historically in fundraising, leads came from direct mail. You bought lists, you held an event and you got people to come to it, or your charities have offer programs and its service users. And with digital, the great sort of resource that it provides nonprofits now is the ability to create their own digital leads. And we see this far more in Europe and in some larger charities in North America, where lead generation is happening as a fundraising mechanism, where but we're still sort of seeing a reluctance to really dive into that and create our own audiences. So the reason why I think this is important, this 60% for us represents, for the SPCA, new donors that come in digitally now. 60% of our new donors come in digitally. So unless we can't feed our attrition or grow by buying lists of direct marketing, direct mail anymore. We can't do it by holding events. We need to be generating a lot of leads digitally in order to keep growing that donor base and keep feeding that 60% or higher coming in digitally. And as we saw on the previous slide, this is where donors are wanting to be. So if we're not finding them there, they're finding another charity, or they're buying stuff on Amazon. So something I talk about a fair bit, and people are still, there's still some successes and people struggling with, is first of all, how do you just create new donors online, primarily using social? And I talk for like 90 minutes on that, but within that we have that sort of audience, the creative, what your ad matrices look like, your testing, your metrics. And so you have that people are using to create donors online. And what we're not seeing a ton of in Canada yet is sort of taking it to the next step and looking at creating, strictly using that to create leads as well as donors. And by leads, I mean names of people who have not, who've given you their information, contact information, but haven't become a donor yet. Now, for our organization, every new email is worth $10.21 to us. We know, on average, that's what we're going to get. It's different for every organization, but we know for us it's worth, as fundraisers, we can justify investing money into acquiring emails. We also have some great statistics on how valuable it is to acquire phone numbers, because for a while, having the phone number on your on your donor form will reduce completion. And so for a while we took it off, and then we saw that it actually, the lifetime value of having the phone number is so much more that we'd prefer to have a fewer donors with their phone numbers. So what we're doing here is taking the strategy that we're using to create new, to get new donors, but using it instead to get the names of people and then go and convert them to donors. Now, a lot of places where we see this happening in Canada so far exists outside of fundraising. It exists as like a department called advocacy or marketing or communications. And what we're seeing in larger nonprofits that are growing, and what we're seeing in Europe, is lead gen is treated as the main point of it is to grow donations and donors. And everything else is a bonus, is a byproduct, but it's residing within fundraising, and and what we're seeing is the goal is to create those people who then we can convert to donors. So we see a number of different models for that lead generation. We need some sort of a value exchange that we're offering people. So the first one was an autism network in the UK, and that was relevance. It was offering connection to people who autism was a concern for, information, resources, etc. We say community building with the Stonewall group, and this was a badge so you could identify and show your support for people coming out. You see an example from the SPCA, which is a mission premium. This was an emergency pet supply checklist. We put this out on Emergency Preparedness Week. We put this out during wildfires. We put this out during earthquake, whatever the big one, whatever that day is. And we use this content a lot, and it gets a lot of new leads for us because it's a mission-based premium that people would like to give us their email and their phone number so they can download a list of how to prepare for an emergency for their pet. And then we also see fueling lead gen through mission-generated traffic. So this is an example where we had a cruelty case, we fundraised on it, we had, I don't know, 27, 45 Havanese dogs, little dogs that people love, and fundraised, we got a lot of new donors. But the real magic was having Facebook Pixel on our website, because you can see with the red arrow the huge spike in traffic we got that day. And of that traffic, a huge percentage of were brand new to us, had never been to our website before. So then we Facebook market to them and offer them this emergency sticker that they can put on their door to tell emergency responders what pets are inside. So we're using our own mission traffic to then remarket, and these are people that didn't make a donation, didn't give us their name, but we're going back to them and saying, you clicked through, you were somewhat interested, we're gonna get your name on something else. Second thing I want to talk about is blurred lines between phone and mobile, with over 50% of people accessing digital through mobile. Our supporters are not distinguishing between the two. So why are we treating them as two separate platforms? So just a couple of different examples. This is a text to online giving that we do. I really like this because we've sent out this ask, and we get a question back from the donor, is this a new way to communicate? But already before she gets an answer, I'll definitely help. And then we reply, yeah, we're trying out texting, what do you think? I like it, I was more personal, just worried it was a scam. Nope, just join the future. We respond, and then she gets reassurance from the same number that texted her, and because it's a nice organic exchange, she's like, yeah, for sure, I'll donate. And she does. We go and we follow up and check her name, and she donates. So we're seeing that crossover between people are getting a text, they're clicking through, and they're giving online. We see, SMS to regular giving conversion, which up until a sort of year ago was very prohibitive in the data sharing in Canada, and now is you're getting more data, so I think is a little more useful for charities here. Also because you used to have to buy huge billboards, and that was very cost prohibitive. Now you can advertise on social media in something like, this is a Red Cross example from the Fort McMurray fires. And then lastly, what we're seeing, and this is an open media group, I put it down, but I was mixing up the OMG as Open Mobile Global. And this is not rolled out in North America yet, but they're doing straight Facebook ads that says click to become a monthly donor. You click through because it's Facebook, it already has your phone number, and it says, great, we're going to send you a text. You can confirm by SMS that you're becoming a monthly donor. So this is a straight, this is seamlessly taking the social experience into your phone experience. So that's the other area, the lead generation and the blurring of the lines between phone and what people would consider web are the two big things that I think to keep an eye on for 2019.
Lovely, thank you. All right, now it's time for Jeff Harrison, who's going to talk a little bit about AI, machine learning, and things I don't understand, but we're going to learn lots more. So I'll cue up his slides and have at it.
Thank you. I'll wait for the slides. But I'll introduce myself. My name is Jeff Harrison. I've been coming to a few of these for the last year, and I work for Greenpeace multinational based in Amsterdam. I live here. I work remotely. Yes, I don't fly there every week. And I'm the Global Insights Manager, so I deal with anything to do with data and how we try to make use of that data across the organization. And so my goal was to go over the who, what, why, when, where, how of AI and how to apply it for nonprofits. And then after I started, I realized that was too ambitious for 5 minutes. So I cut out half of them. We're just going to go through what, why, and how for 2019. So it's a little bit more manageable. So first of all, this topic is in the news all the time. I was looking at the Google Trends and how much this is spiking in the last 2 years, you know, the term AI and all this, and it's really unhelpful. So I looked up the definition. So AI is, the quote is, a branch of computer science dealing with the simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. So not really helpful at all. It's super vague. I think one thing to just think about is we're talking about like specific abilities, not general intelligence. It's not what you see in the movies. It's computer vision, it's voice to text on your phone, it's translation, prediction models, things like that. It's kind of very narrowly focused. And there's two big topics that I'm going to talk about, and that really for nonprofits is what's interesting for us. One is machine learning, which is the application of algorithms to produce models that make predictions or classify data, which we've been doing for a long time, but the thing is they do it themselves, you don't program them. And the second one is natural language processing, which is computers' reading of written language to understand it, in quotes. So those are two big ones. So the first one is machine learning. So, how do we go back? Really, for our purposes, just think about machine learning as a black box. You don't really need to understand the technology behind it and what's happening in there. You can hire a consultant or buy a product. But really, how it works at an abstract level is we train a model. So it's a model that you don't really understand. So you take a bunch of input data, which could be your donor history or different things about your supporters, and you say what you want to predict, your output. Which for me here, I'm just saying this is a retention model. So did the donor quit? Did the donor stay? And it goes to this type of a data set and it finds a pattern. We call it a trained model. And then you take that model, that black box, and you apply it to the future. So you take a new input, like a new donor who's just joined, and it says, this is what we're predicting. They're leaving next month. You know, it's that simple. It's inputs and outputs, and the model that you produce. The second one, maybe it's a little bit fast, but I'll slow down a little bit. The second one is natural language processing, which again is the reading and understanding of written content by computers. And so you've probably already seen this maybe in social media analysis, where you get something like this, which is sentiment analysis is the big one. So I'm really a big fan of 5 emotion sentiment analysis. This is just a screenshot from a dashboard I use to understand what's happening in Greenpeace's social media. So, you know, we could see there was a little spike in joy on the 7th, but a lot of fear back on the 4th. So we can see the emotions that people are expressing in their tweets and in the media coverage, which really lets us understand thousands and thousands of tweets or messages without having to read them or even look at them. This was a summary of 7,200 tweets. Another more advanced application for natural language is the reading of entire articles. So this is a product that we use that scans news articles. It picks up the people. It says what's being said about them. It says what are events. And what we use this for is scanning huge amounts of media. You can find things like what are your quotes that were quoted in multiple articles, or who's the most mentioned person on a topic. So entity detection, event detection, quote detection, and also whether or not positive or negative things are being said about these people. So again, as an organization, you can see how we can look at tens of thousands of articles and see how is, you know, how am I being portrayed or how is Greenpeace being portrayed in the media without having to read it. So that's just sort of 2 sort of quick examples. The next one is why now? So why is this coming up? And this is kind of interesting because machine learning was invented in 1959. So it's really old, like 60, 70 years old. And in 1982, it was proved that you could build intelligent models based on this, and then nothing for like 30 years. And you know, why was that? And there's 2 fundamental reasons why. 1 minute. Ooh, not even gonna get to how. Maybe no. We'll hold that for the bar. The first one is that we've had this data explosion in the world. So back in 2012, 90% of the data in the entire world of recorded information was produced in just 2 years. And that's because of smartphones, social media, and cloud storage. So this is just exploding globally. So one, we have all this information that we've never had before. And the second one is about the increased speed of computers. So just in the last 10 years, computers are literally tens of thousands times faster. and we're able to take all of this huge amount of data and find the patterns in it that weren't relevant or weren't findable before. And so what I'm going to just skip to is the last part, which I wanted to summarize, what are the nonprofit applications? And there are three big applications of these two technologies. I kind of touched on them. The first one is in marketing communication and targeting. So who are the people we should be contacting with an email appeal or fundraising appeal? How can we use a more sophisticated way of identifying them rather than just a rules-based, query from your database? The second one is, I mentioned with the natural language. So social media and media comments, analysis, and understanding of this huge amount of conversations out in the world. And the last one, which was somewhat touched on with the chatbots, is about inbound communication management. So how do we prioritize the communication that our supporters are sending us through emails or through chat applications? So today we can see prioritization based on sentiment. Is this person angry? Are they happy? How should we escalate this? In 2019, we should see AI augmented chat bots or chat applications where the computer will handle a lot of the requests, put it over to one of your staff if they can't handle it anymore. And then in the future, we'll have humanless AI chat where humans will be directly interacting with the computer. Hey, Siri, I want to up my donation. I want to give $100. It doesn't even touch a human. That just enters it in the database and charges them next month. So those are the types of three big applications we're exploring in Greenpeace. I'm not saying that we're doing anything perfect or anything like that, but they're really emerging, and I expect next year we'll see a lot of them come out as products.
Fabulous, so thank you. Awesome, so our next presenter is going to be Jessica McLeod, who's going to be talking a little bit about Instagram stories and this whole stories revolution, because you'll now see there's basically stories in all your social apps. And some of us are old and doddering, so please explain.
So Instagram stories might be pretty straightforward for some of you, but for others it might be something that you've never tried or that your organization maybe isn't implementing into your current strategy. So I decided to kind of go more narrow and deep, as we like put it, with this kind of niche topic. So let's get my face off the screen. Okay, so topic is Instagram stories and how to effectively use them. So the reason I chose this was because at Jelly Marketing, the digital marketing agency that I work at, a lot of the clients that we see come in for social consultations or workshops or our services, they generally have some kind of social media presence already established. And what that looks like is they're either posting on social media every day, sometimes they're using a scheduling tool, but I would say about 80% of the time, one thing that they're underutilizing is stories and those in-the-moment posts. And as Kyle mentioned earlier, the video and the trend of video increasing is one way to stay on top of the social media trends. And as a nonprofit, we're always looking for ways to, stay on top of the trends and ways that are quick and effective. So we're going to get into Instagram stories here. So just a quick blurb, we all know probably what Instagram stories are, but for those who aren't using them, they're bite-sized photos or videos, like I mentioned. They're posted to your followers, they expire after 24 hours, they don't appear on your profile grid, and they're a fun way to interact with your audience. So a lot of the times organizations are using this to show behind the scenes when they're at events, but it's a great way to post a piece of content when you want to share, provide value to your audience or share some information that doesn't live on your evergreen feed. So what I mean by that is a trend that we're seeing is organizations or businesses or brands, their social media and specifically Instagram, you'll notice a very curated kind of trend or vibe, and it almost tells a story. So Instagram stories is a great way, like I said, to share, whether it's, we're gonna get into that after, whether it's, like I said, in the moment posts that aren't gonna affect your overall trend. So quick demonstration how to post on Instagram stories. You're gonna open up your app, you're gonna click that home button on the bottom left, tap the camera icon on the top left corner there, tap the circle for once for a photo and hold it down for video. So super easy to use. What we see coming up for organizations and how they can use this is behind the scenes. So what I mean by that are whether it's office tours, if it's interviews, if it's Q&As. Like I mentioned, things that aren't going to be living on that evergreen feed and that aren't expected to have a high production value because they're on your story. So that's kind of something we're definitely looking for in the nonprofit sector as well, is we don't always have those resources to produce these high quality videos. So another thing that we like to use it for our nonprofit clients are meet the teams. So like I mentioned, if you're doing interview style, if you're posting a photo of them, if you're doing something fun in the office, it adds that human and that face behind the brand. As the first presenter mentioned, how these scheduled posts might seem not as genuine, whereas when you're posting these behind the scenes videos and clips, you're getting a more face behind the brand and adding that personality to it. So it could be at events as well, any exciting announcements you might have, and like I mentioned a couple times, things that you don't want living on that, what we call evergreen feed. So a couple ways to optimize your Instagram stories are to use the variety of tags and stickers and GIFs and all that stuff that lives on them. So I'm going to go through them really quick here. So there's 3 different types of tags you can use, and all these types of tags are going to ultimately give your stories more reach. So there's going to be more eyes on what you're posting. So the first one is a location tag. So I took this video here at Jelly. We're in Fort Langley. If any of you venture into the valley, come visit us. We have jelly for you for your souvenir to take with you. So you can tag your location. Fort Langley might have been a more probably gotten us a couple more eyes on this post, just because it's not as narrow. People aren't necessarily looking at the location tag of Jelly. The next is an account tag, so you can tag the businesses that you're with or the people that you're with. This is great because this allows whoever you're tagging to then share it onto their page as well, so that again gives you a little bit more exposure there. And hashtags again, so your organization might have a branded hashtag, so using those allows people who are clicking on that hashtag and looking for it, if it's event hashtag, like tonight, people who are clicking on those hashtags are going to see your photos. So you can also add stickers and GIFs. These are kind of just fun little ways to spruce up your video or your photo. So there are static stickers and emojis. They're really fun. This is taken on Friday, as you can tell. Lots to do with that grid. We've got moving GIFs. So they're essentially the stickers, but they're animated. Super fun way to kind of add a little bit of animation to your video. Again, this all goes back to not having necessarily those high quality video resources, but still making your video engaging and fun, right, to your audience. You can add text and doodles. So it was recently my 1 year at Jelly, so I posted this photo here. Pretty straightforward, typing out a caption or a comment. The last point is important though. If you have a call to action, you want to make sure that's highlighted. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's something like 80% of people aren't using audio when they're scrolling through social media. So it's always important to have a caption, especially if you have a video where you might be talking, just your key bullet notes of what you want to try to communicate. You can write words with this pen, or you can draw doodles. Okay, here's where the fun part comes out. So this is more of the gamification of Instagram stories. So Jelly got a pet chameleon a couple months ago, and naturally we took to social media to announce it and to ask our audience to send us names. So we posted this photo here, and the question widget allows us to post a question and our audience to then submit any answer they'd like. And as well, there is a slider feature that allows your audience to react to a question that you pose or a statement, and they can slide the emoji of your choice either up or down the slider. And for the record, we named him Peanut. He's very cute, as in peanut butter and jelly. I think the runner-up name was Karma Chameleon, but it wasn't as on-brand as Peanut. Okay, so getting into countdown. So this is one that I can see nonprofits using a lot more as well, is the countdown widget when it comes to fundraising galas or events. So this widget allows you to schedule a countdown from the day that you post it to when your event or your fundraiser might be. And then there's polls as well, which is similar to the first questions one, where you can pose a question. However, this time you're only allowed to post 2 different answers. So, let's slow here. So you've got your countdown there on this post, and then you can also post a question, will you be there? And your audience can respond yes or no. It's kind of a good way to get some quick insight too to your audience and a little bit of research, market research. So some quick examples. Etsy, if you're familiar with Etsy, they're an online marketplace where people can sell things that they've made. So this is a fun example of how to use Instagram stories. So all these posts here were posted in succession, and I would say that they were taken directly from a phone while they were doing this craft here. You can see they've utilized things like text and like doodles and different colors, and it's a super quick, little engaging, digestible tidbit that probably didn't take that long. That provides value to your audience and doesn't require a lot of resources or time. Airbnb, we all know Airbnb. They do Travel Tuesday, so they'll post a photo of one of their locations or one of their homes, and kind of they use polls, as you can see in the middle post there, and they ask their audience to guess where that particular house is. So kind of a fun, engaging way. It ultimately makes the customer or the audience member or your followers stop when they're scrolling through all these stories and take that minute to engage with you. So some key takeaways here. We could talk on and on about storytelling and marketing, but just something to definitely keep in mind, especially in these Instagram stories. They are called stories, so it's kind of fun to kind of curate that post by post and using those little widgets and things that I showed you there. Make it fun. It's meant to show your personality and your brand and the face behind your brand. Your evergreen feed is where you can have those, curated professional photos, but your stories are expected to have that same, maybe like professional quality. So if you're showing off your brand and you want to show off your brand personality and something fun you're doing, Instagram stories is great for that. Try new things. Try some of those widgets, those countdowns, take a poll, see how your audience reacts to it, and get creative. So things like posting a DIY like Etsy did of a craft or a countdown for your event or things like that. So play around with it. It's a great way to gain some insight as to what your audience responds to, and it's free and it's relatively low on resources. If you want to grab my card later, we can talk more, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Awesome. So our next talk is going to be from Matthew Pattinson, who's going to be talking about how we can use the lean canvas to uncover big ideas that matter. I'll cue up slides. Here you go.
Thank you. How you doing, everyone? So actually my trend for 2019 is something called Lean Impact. So there was a book that came out at the end of the year by Ann-Mei Cheng, and it's about using the lean methodology for not-for-profits. So her book's like really strategic. It's got lots of stories of how it's being used. It's great, but with my presentation, we're just gonna dive into the weeds a little bit with one aspect, which is the lean canvas, which she doesn't directly mention in her book, but it's a thing I'm passionate about. Although I work at a business incubator now where we specialize in the lean methodology, my previous career was in international development. And so I worked on a 5-year program that was helping women's empowerment. And it was we wrote a grant for it, wrote a proposal to get a grant, and you're structured into it, and lots of focus on outputs and not outcomes. And when I go back and think about that now, and knowing what I know about the lean methodology, I can see that there's this how we manage uncertainty in non-for-profits. There was maybe some alternate ways that we could use with the lean methodology. Before I dive into the solution, I just wanted to touch on 3 things that prevent. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Prevent uncovering ideas that can scale and have high impact. So one is that there's high potential ideas that are killed before they're even started. So if as an organization we have like a big planning process before an idea is presented, or even if internally we don't have a way to kind of get out ideas in a quick manner, we can kill them before they even go. Second is because in the not-for-profit sector we're working on these complex problems or wicked problems, what we initially think is a solution can change as we start to unravel the coils, as it is. So, and we can only act on a few ideas at a time because we have limited time and resources. So we need a way to quickly screen out the ideas of value from the ideas that don't. And then sometimes with the current proposal process and getting grants, we can kind of get stuck into building something that nobody wants and trying to deliver it on time and on budget. So it's hard to get the ship turned around as it may. I'm going to skip that for time. So the first lesson, the lean lesson for myself, is that dynamic models and not static plans are the fastest way to outline a new product or service. So plans, content tends to be made up. They're time consuming to write, and they're outdated as soon as you write them. So then you have to, it's a lot of work to write them and then a lot of work to update them. And they're not really an effective tool for communication. Models, or business models, organizational models, essentially demonstrate how an organization captures and delivers value. So they're fast to update. You can easily make multiple ones and change them as you go and as you're learning. So they're very iterative. They only focus on the key assumptions, very concise, and they're great one-page, easy conversations. So they're very accessible throughout the organization. And so the second tool that I think is the lean lesson for myself is that the lean canvas is the best tool to build models. So this is what the lean canvas looks like. So there's a whole bunch of different canvases out there: the business model canvas, social enterprise canvas. For myself, I prefer the lean canvas, and one of the big reasons is the column here on the left. It's very problem focused, and so on a business model canvas, you'll have something like key activities, which can be open to interpretation and are the essential things getting on there. But the lean canvas is very problem focused, and then also key metrics. So in not-for-profits, the things that we want to be thinking about are value, impacts, and scalability, and so we can include some metrics around there about how we're going to measure that and track it. So I think touched on the first two. The other thing I like about the lean canvas is that it connects the money to the mission, and so by having the cost structure and the revenues, you can more or less crudely kind of measure what your impact is relative to your cost. So I'm just going to touch on just some of the key segments on how to set it up. And I'll say this again at the end of my presentation. On my website, I actually spent some more time in kind of explaining how to set this up for not-for-profits, but given the time. So customer segments. So here you want to put like early adopters, which are defining characteristics of your beneficiaries or your donors. And then what are the problems that you're addressing? And so in some canvases, purpose-driven canvases, they'll have like a mission or vision up top. But in the lean canvas, I think this can go right in the problem section for beneficiaries. And then it's also important to do it for donors as well, because the reason why people donate is they're expecting something out of it. Now, it can be something intrinsic, like good feelings or reassurance that their money is going to a good source. And then the value proposition is just what makes you unique. So, and another key thing to know about the lean canvas is that the solution box is really constrained relative to the problems. And so I think this is, as innovators, we tend to have like what we call like a solution bias. And so we're more focused on the solution and then rather than the problem. So I find that this is really helpful for myself in that everything's got to connect back to the problem and only the few key features in the solution. And one other thing that sometimes appears on other canvases is your partners. And so partners are important in not-for-profit because it's how we can, one of the strategies for delivering at scale. So I'll either put problems in the solution box if it's a co-delivery model, or I'll put them in what's called the channels box, which is typically how donors and beneficiaries first hear about you. But I'll also put any key partners that if they're doing, let's say, in international development, like last mile delivery, they'll go into the channels box. So when to use the Lean Canvas. They're great for ideation sessions, strategic conversations, and they're great for both field staff and leadership. So field staff, it's a quick tool where they can map something out in 20 minutes, and it's at least a starting point for a conversation. And then leadership at inflection points where they want to have a discussion, and it's a nice, clear way to communicate. And then the last Lean lesson is that the best way to find an idea that matters is to test lots of models. So because they're so quick to develop, you can develop a lot of them and changing different aspects of your organizational or program model. And then after the brainstorming, screen the ideas based on the appropriateness of like how they address the problems, who benefits and how, the risk for relative to the potential impact, and then also the ability for them to scale. And so rather than like looking just for one kind of model, just iterating again and again, and having sometimes in these brainstorming sessions, having like a forced target for models can help. I'm not going to touch on all of these, but like the key thing when testing is to, before you start, have a condition for success or a condition for failure. So this is when you're designing an experiment to test something that's you're not sure about in the model. So risk is something that you're not sure about, and the consequences of being wrong are dire to the validity of the model. Time box them. It's we can kind of like, I have a tendency to drag things on and on, so it's nice to have a specific deadline for when the experiment ends. And then your learning is comparing what did you expect with what you got as a result. So this is what the process can kind of look like laid out, is that you'd start with multiple models at the start, and then you'd screen out some, and then start going through and testing some riskiest assumptions on those, and then in the end you'll find an organizational model or a model for your program that's the best. Offers the most potential for impact and scale. So thank you, that's my presentation. There's, again, my contact information's up there. If you want to play around with the Lean Canvas and you have a program that you're ideating on, or you have a strategic planning session coming up for your organization, if you want to create a Lean Canvas, you can send it to me, and then I'll be happy to set up a phone call, and we can just walk through it, and I can provide some feedback, and you can kind of get a touch on using the tool if you're not familiar with the Lean Canvas already. Thank you.
Fabulous. So thank you. Excellent. So we're running into our final two presentations. Our next one is with Daryl Hatton from Fundraiser, and he's going to be talking about the market shift from major donations to micro donations, and from macro projects down to micro projects. So ladies and gentlemen, give it up to our friend Daryl.
So I love coming to these things. One of the things I'd always love to do is be able to speak with the speed and intelligence that Brady does, and with the passion and presence that Rob Cottingham does. Anyway, we'll get the slide up here and then we'll get on with this. So I'm founder of what's called Connection Point. We're best known for our fundraising brand, Fundraiser. And we have a couple of other different companies under there if you ever hear about us. What a lot of people don't know is we're actually based here in Vancouver, and that we've helped raise over $135 million in over 200,000 projects all around the world. So not well known for that. But it's a small team of 10 here, so it's not all that, it's not like we're huge in what we've impacted. Some of the things I want to talk to you about today, we talked about at the Future of Crowdfunding conference with Bloomberg in New York in November. We were invited to talk about what the major trends are, and it was a distillation of 2 of those ideas that we wanted to bring in here today. If you want more information about that, it's a good thing to check up on the website. The whole interview was published and it was live streamed all across the Bloomberg terminals and on the Bloomberg channels in the US and in Asia, in Europe. So there's more information on that. Big question is, in a lot of situations we're in a trend, what's the problem? What's the problem we're trying to address? And in this case, I think one of the things that we're going to look at with these trends, the problems of demographics. I'm sorry for this small slide. These will be available afterwards if you want. But this is the different cohorts that were done in the different generations in the US, unfortunately, but over the last few years. So as we're going across, we're seeing the number of people that are in each age category. And you've heard the words for this before. This is the category of the baby boomers and Generation X. So I'm in this category. Born anywhere from 1946 up to 1980. Particularly, I was born in 61, so I'm technically a boomer. Key thing about this is the area of the population where most donations were coming from for a long period of time. This is a very generous cohort. It was the very largest cohort for the longest period of time, and it contributed the most to our philanthropy. A lot of the models that we have right now for dealing with donors are based on dealing with this demographic. The way we communicate with them, their expectations, how we want to engage, how frequently we engage, all of that is defined in that category. And then something happened called the internet. And the next 2 generations that were born are what we call the internet generations. They're millennials or they're Generation Z, and these are the groups that have followed. The most important or interesting thing about this is 2 things. One, collectively, they're bigger than the biggest generation out there, the boomer generation. So there's so many of these that they will become the major force that we have to look for donations coming into our models moving forward. Second thing about it is that as a group, every generalization is false, including the one I'm about to make. But as a group, they tend to dislike all the ways that they were communicated with the previous generations. So where it used to work, where you would send out a calendar at the end of the year with an envelope in it that said, please, will you submit a contribution back to me? And you were getting checks in the mail. That was fantastic. The digital, or we call them digital native generation, is likely to look at that and going, oh my goodness, you've just sent me a dead tree fired around the world in a carbon-generated airplane, and you want me to send you a check back. Why can't I do this all electronically? So the big component here is the differences between the generations is pretty significant. And the techniques that we've used before won't work now. Again, sorry for this eye chart, but the thing that's kind of important here is basically, to tell the truth, the boomers are dying off. They're going. Some of them rather rapidly. And so they'll no longer be a source of funding moving forward. And the key thing is that they were very generous in terms of the way the funding worked for most organizations. We've become quite dependent on them. And as you can tell, I've had a cold, so I'm losing the voice quickly here. But and if we're going to replace that revenue, we're going to have to start thinking about the differences of how we might communicate with a different generation. The second part of the problem that we're looking at is that marketing is no longer effective. It's incredibly difficult to get a marketing message in front of a consumer now. And consumer means, in this case, your donor. Nobody wants to look at your ads on television. They'll skip it with a PVR. Nobody wants to listen to you on the radio because they're getting the music from Spotify. And nobody wants to talk with you as a sales rep when you go into a store anymore. It's very difficult to get a marketing message through to these different people. So the solution that was proposed is social media was going to be our savior. By using social media, we can engage with our populations, we can share information with them, we can get them to interact with us, and we'll get our marketing message in front of them. And that was good for a while. But one of the things that's happened recently, especially with Facebook creating its own scandals, people distrusting the platform a lot more, over the last little while, the green line is search traffic that was delivered to a series of websites using Google results. And the green line is the search traffic that was coming, or the reference traffic that was coming to those websites that was directed by Facebook. So it's gone from being a very significant component of the traffic that was coming to the website into what was half of what was before. And this was done as of February of 2018. I think that trend was on quite a downward spiral. We're certainly seeing that in our data from our site. The other thing that's really interesting is the mix of social sharing that we used to trust is changing. In this is the overall content, so the amount of traffic that's come to each different site based on the source or the type of social sharing. So we've got some examples in there of how much Facebook has done, how much Twitter has done, and others in general. So the blue one being Facebook, Twitter. 65% of that is what's called dark social. And this is where sharing is happening by more direct communication mechanisms. So for example, I'm using Facebook Messenger to send a message about something to my friends. I'm sharing it that way. Or I'm sharing it to my private crowd with Instagram. I'm not publicly sharing that. It's not generally available to everyone. And one of the difficulties of that is it's difficult to track. We call it dark social because you don't know where it's gone. You don't know how much impact it's had. You might only see the result later on. So great, what's happened? We've heard that we need to change over from a series of techniques that used to work with the previous generation. And we're told now that if we want to engage with the new generations, we need to use all this social media. And that we're coming to the point in the bridge and realizing that we don't have any further we can go down this path. I'm not saying that existing social is dead, but I am saying that it's declining. And we're certainly seeing this in our data right now. The amount of relevance that's coming from a Facebook share is much less than what we're getting from dark social. So what's the solution to all that? Well, I want to talk to you about two different trends that we see happening in our customer base and what different customers are trying to do to resolve some of this. And it turns into trends that are macros in the industry, but we have some very specific examples of it that might give you a reason why. The first issue is the movement from major projects to micro projects. So if you think about a major project, you may want to fund a school or something like that. A micro project is how can you break that down into much smaller pieces so it's easier to do? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If we focus on the little bits of a problem, we can resolve it. And when we're looking at trying to replace this huge amount of funding that we've lost, one of the ways to look at it is to break it down into smaller chunks and see what we can do to effectively add more techniques to supplement it and eat it one bite at a time. The second thing is that if we want to try and replace big gifts, one of the things we can look for is to try and actually go and find a way to get the new community to give us a bunch of big gifts. Or we can talk about the movement from major gifts to micro gifts, where instead of focusing on getting the one gift a year from someone, we focus on trying to get them more engaged with us and giving us more gifts all the time. Gates Foundation did a little bit of a study on this. They said, it makes sense when you think about it. What's the way to increase the amount of revenue you get from a donor? Do I ask them for a bigger and bigger gift all the time? Or do I ask them to give more frequently, smaller gifts, much smaller gifts? And the answer was based on data, was to get them to give much more frequently and much smaller gifts. The reason for this pans out in this way. When we're giving, we're actually buying brain chemicals. This is a good thing to do. When we're getting a result, and that result is creating chemistry in our brain, specifically these 4 different hormones. This is why when we give, we feel good. We're herd animals, we're social animals. We're designed to take care of our crowd and to take care of those around us. Evolution has provided us a good feeling that goes with that when we do it. So we get these brain chemicals coming out. Now, if you think about a major gift, I get a certain amount of brain chemical for that. And think about a minor gift, I get a certain amount of brain chemical. If I give you $50, I feel pretty good about something I've done. If I give you $50,000, I don't feel thousands of times better. Our body's not designed for that. So the idea of getting you to be rewarded for your gift many, many times by giving much smaller gifts makes sense. So one of the things that we need to look at to solve this problem is how do we increase the digital natives' engagement with our cause? Because again, if we want to go from one major gift, we want them to be giving more often. It's now looking at, that's done or 1 minute, okay. Better hurry. So one of the things, if we want to get that done, is we need to be more engaged with us so that we're talking with them all the time, specifically about the impact of what they're doing with us, so that they're more inspired to give additional gifts. This group is about community and collaboration and communication. They want to feel like they're working together with you in solving the problem, and they want to hear about that in communications from you. I gave my gift, this is exactly what it did. So to give you an example, I'm just going to slip through here. Give you a live example of one of our customers that's doing exactly this. This is One Girl Can, it's a local cause here in Vancouver. What they used to do is fund education for girls in Africa. They fund schools, and they talked about the major project of a school. What they did earlier this year is they broke those down into funding individual girls who are going to those schools. And they're running a micro project, one for each girl. And by funding it this way, they've broken that elephant down into much smaller chunks and are being able to successfully tell the stories of individuals. Someone who donates to this has a face and a name and a story that they realize they made an impact. And they're more willing to give again multiple times in a year. So the suggestion for 2019, the trend is, if we're following these trends, one of the best things to do is to try and experiment within your organization. We don't want to try and say this is a solution for everyone, but you'd be surprised at the number of projects that you think that used to be a major project that will effectively break down into micro projects. And I'm happy to talk to you about that afterwards if you like. So again, appreciate your time.
Fabulous. Well, thank you. All right, and for our final 6 minutes, Ashleigh from Van Hack is actually going to build on this idea around micro communities and micro projects to sort of talk about the plateauing of social media platforms and how we're all moving towards micro communities. Give it up! Woo!
Hi everyone. We're almost done. This is the first time I'm doing this presentation, so if you have any feedback or any questions, I'll be around for a while. Cool. Hey, my name's Ash. I work for a company called Van Hack. We are a 190,000 strong micro community. We were built about 4 years ago. I'll get to the end and I'll tell you a little bit about what we do, but let's start off with micro communities in 2019. And many of you probably know a little bit about this, but we're moving away from mass communications. There's a lot of just bad news in the media about things like Facebook, Twitter, Google, a lot of these large companies stealing your data, so on and so forth. And people really are getting conscious about privacy and they want to engage with brands now, but they don't want to engage in mass mediums anymore. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're moving away from posts, tweets, YouTube videos, blog articles, email newsletters, etc., and moving towards other tools, and I'll give you some concrete examples as to why and how. So we're going away from mass communication and we're going towards interpersonal communication online. We're talking to people, so people want you to engage with me, you want to engage with all of us, which is ironic. And let's talk about how. So that's Slack. Some of you may use it. We use it in a very different way, and I'll show you in a bit. Let's find out. Here's a neat little comic that I saw today. There's lots of trends, but what I want to focus a little bit on is how to actually take advantage of the trend. The first thing that I want to talk about a little bit is finding your own tribe. So you've got some donors who are mass donors, some people who are very engaged with you online. There are probably these people who are replying to some of your Facebook posts all the time, commenting, they're engaging with you, they reply to your emails. When you say, hi, Peter, they say, hey, thanks so much for emailing me this. These are the kinds of people, and they're really excited about what you do. To borrow from a very prominent marketer, Seth Godin, Find Your Tribe, take them online. So let's say you have them in person, they're very engaged at your personal events. We'll talk about the tools you can use that. Give up control. So it's really important. Just when you're engaging in micro communities, you don't have to be the one who drives that. Somebody else can do it. It can be, Bob, who's super excited all the time, and let him post a lot and let people engage with Bob. Maybe Bob's not part of your core team. Be authentic. So this is pretty relevant and a lot of people have talked about today. Engage individually. So single out people and talk to them. And finally, make custom mini groups. So, just build groups on the fly. And let's see some tools you can do that. This one's pretty cool. Who here uses a Facebook group right now? Okay, so this is, we've been doing this for a while. I'm part of a really cool Facebook group that I'm pretty proud of. It's called Popper Ride, or it used to be called Hitch Planet. It used to be based out of this exact space a long time ago. It's a kind of like ride share to get between cities and towns. It's available in Vancouver, popperride.com. What I love about Popper Ride is Flo, who's a pretty cool guy. He created this group. Initially, it used to be called VIP, and it was for their power users, so people who were really using it a lot. And he wanted to, they were building this product, it was really small. They went out and they started announcing new ideas or any kind of updates. They rebranded, they posted there, people hated it. Then they posted publicly, and now people have gone around to it, but then they got the feedback and, they really test out things there first. When Greyhound skipped out of Western Canada, people jumped there and posted, hey, this Greyhound's gone, you should know about this. People called them. Imagine if your supporters called you and said, hey, there's this cool thing that's happening you should do. And so the group allows them to do that. And not just Facebook, tomorrow we might be using some other tool and building these kind of internal communities within these tools, LinkedIn, whatever you use, I think is something we're already doing. Slack. So I'm going to show you a little bit about this later, but we use Slack as a team, and then we have another Slack group with about 50,000 people on it. And so we'll post, so what we do is we help companies find software developers on one side, and the other side, we help software developers learn soft skills and language skills. So the great thing about having your supporters, your core VIP people, or even just everybody who donated to you this year or supported you this year on the Slack group is you can post about things and people will engage. So if they don't know how to use Slack, you can teach them. It's pretty quick to learn, but a lot of, especially digital natives in offices nowadays are moving to this. So also built in Vancouver, like I said before, it's potentially one of the best messaging apps ever. And then you can build things like little channels to engage about different topics. I would suggest that you keep your team groups private on Slack, so team channels, and then invite people to more mass channels. Have an event, start a chat group. So almost every chat tool from WhatsApp to Messenger to basically anything else has invite links that you can just share. So send that in an email, say you're coming to the event tonight, here's a WhatsApp group or Messenger or whatever you use, and say, hey, listen, sign on, and people will comment, and you can keep that group going. So every time you run an event, keep the same group, post about it, real time. People can say, hey, where's the washroom? And somebody can reply. That's an engagement, but it's still people are interacting with each other, and it's a little bit of an event-based moment. And then this is one of my favorite products that I've heard of last year. It's called Logic. They're an amazing publication. They're a subscriber-based tech publication. So they have like an exclusive gated kind of area where they talk about tech news, and I love what they're doing. We ourselves have premium offerings where we have a premium part of our website that only paid subscribers can view. So if you want to experiment with that, where you're having a special part of your website that only VIP donors can access and they need a code, I would recommend that. And here's a bonus, micro video. So this is not a group or online community, but one thing I love is this tool called Vidyard, with a thing called Low Video, where you can send individual videos. So next time somebody donates a certain amount or more, or engages in you a certain way, make them a custom video, just send it by email. Imagine if you got an email that said, "Hey Chad, thanks for that donation, love ya." That would be so amazing. Lastly, this is our community. So VanHack, we're 190,000 tech professionals online. We start off building a school for software developers around the world. We use, funny enough, we start off as a Facebook message chat. And my CEO added 5,000 people. He got an email saying he had hit the limit on friends. And then he went, oh, well, that sucks. Then we went to a Facebook group. And then on Slack, we use WhatsApp groups locally within communities. So we have a Kitchener WhatsApp group, we have a Vancouver WhatsApp group, a Sao Paulo WhatsApp group, and so on. We have a premium zone that members pay for where they get exclusive content. And then we also do some work for nonprofits. Because we have a community of engineers, sometimes we do tool projects. We built an app for the Binners project, which you may know of, that's based locally. It's called the Binners Hook. It's just a little app where you can like tell them to come pick up your stuff if you have a house party at home or something, and a binner will come pick it up. And I'd like to offer any kind of nonprofit here. We'll get our developers to build you something absolutely for free. So what they want is to engage with people and speak English because they come from non-English speaking countries. They're all over the world, and they love building stuff for other people if they can communicate with them and practice the language skills they're learning. So if you want to know more about that, just come out with me later.
Fabulous. Well, thank you. Well, there we go. Our brains are now full to busting. So, as I said, we're going to be back again doing this in February, March, April, May, June. We have a fancy conference. You'll hear about it next week. Big things. Otherwise, I'd like to thank all of you for coming and joining us today. It's going to be fun. We're going to keep on doing this. As I said, you get basically 30 seconds maximum if you have anything interesting to share. So if you want to tell people about the cool thing you're doing, just come up to the front here and we're going to pass that mic around real fast. I'm going to show you a quick example. So it's going to go like this. Hi there, my name's Eli from Net2van Vancouver. I host these events with all these beautiful people, but I have no proof of that. I desperately need a volunteer photographer. If you're interested, please give me a shout. Just like that. So if anyone else has interesting things to do, projects on the go, new in town and looking for a partner, come on up. Who wants to do this? Come on. Just like hustle on to the front. We'll just cram up here in the front. Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Jadine. I work for Growing Chefs. We are starting our recruitment for new volunteers. So if you know anyone who would love to teach kids how to grow or cook healthy food and teach them about healthy food systems, or if you want to learn more about that by volunteering, please go to growingchefs.ca. Thanks.
Perfect. Come on up. Go for it.
Hi there. I just snuck up here. Sorry. My name is Krista. I'm the Tech Career Advisor for Cornerstone International College. So we have several classes of web and mobile app developers who are really interested in getting either volunteer or intern experience with companies, helping develop either websites, helping develop apps, really anything that you think that you could use to help better your business or your nonprofit. So if anyone is interested in having a developer help out on a volunteer basis, just come find me. We'll talk about your project and go from there. Thank you.
Awesome. There are people out there who want to make you look good.
Thank you, Eli. Hello, everybody. My name is Pattinson. I'm the CEO of Event Chain. We've recently got into this. Thank you, Eli, for shouting out to us at the beginning of the presentation. We are live in Vancouver. We're helping host people's events. We're really trying to help out the nonprofit scene. If you guys are attending any events or organizing any events, please feel free to come up to myself, Dino, Amanda, Charlie. Our executive team is here, and we're ready to help you guys out as much as we can. We're very in tune with technology. We did put all of the presentations on our Instagram story. You can take a look at Event Chain on Instagram. And thank you, Jelly, for responding back to us. And thank you guys very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Come on up.
Hello. Sorry. My name is Omar. I'm a software engineer.
I already have a full-time job, but I'm willing to donate some time to develop applications or any mobile applications or web applications for nonprofits. I also have Arabic as my second language, so if that's useful in any way, I'm here.
Fabulous. Well, that is a very kind offer. Thank you. Don't let these people escape. Hunt them down. Come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is Lindy, and I actually started a meetup about 2 months ago called the Accountability Group Vancouver. And so there's lots of things that I'm looking for or introducing, I guess. It's basically around people coming together to better themselves, better their work in all areas of life. A lot of times people come together through personal missions. So a lot of times it's a religious group or a solo entrepreneur. They'll get together and meet weekly, bi-weekly.
That's not it. Google did not give me what I wanted.
So I go with or Accountability Group Network. I've kind of been going between the two names. Let's have a show of hands. What's better? But yeah, so it's basically the accountability group is already a thing. Lots of people are engaged, but my background's actually in environmental work. And this is kind of a different avenue to try to allow people to think about where we exert accountability in our life, and try to make people think about things in a larger way, and really see where we're passively, or we're not actually exerting accountability in our life, and kind of challenging these ideas through theory, learning, and just peer-to-peer kind of things. So that's it. And yeah, so basically right now, it goes that everyone comes into groups of 4 to 6 people. Then there's an online forum where everyone can communicate, discuss progress, what's working, what's not working. And then finally, there's actually workshops that will be held monthly to help people grow their soft skills. So if it's being assertive, confrontational communication, where we want to actually achieve goals, but it's hard because we don't have everything we need to do that. And yeah, that's it. So anyone interested in the idea, or the next meeting's on Thursday, so at Yaletown Roundhouse.
Perfect, thank you.
It's nice talking to you.
Coming up, we've got room for 2 more.
Hello, my name is Conrad. I recently moved back to Vancouver after being a climate scientist in the UK. So I was building numerical models for climate science, and now I've switched over to building data science and machine learning models. So if you want to have a conversation about climate science or AI, I'd like to have you with you at the pub.
Yeah, nice. Welcome back to Vancouver. One last one. Anyone else want to be brave? Well then, let us end this now. I have some homework for you, of course.